So I know most of you watched the Senate Banking and Insurance Committee meeting yesterday afternoon, where they took up the foreclosure bill that are currently pending before the Florida Senate and the companion bill on the House side of things. One of the things that was frustrating for me was to listen to the debate and discussion and hear that there were very good questions coming from some of the senators, but I didn't feel like the detailed and specific answers were being provided and pointing directly to the bill. One of the key questions, in fact, I think the most important question, came from Senator Fasano from here in the Pinellas County area, when Senator Fasano asked quite clearly, what's the point of the bill? Fasano indicated that in his district, and it's certainly clear, that in Pinellas County, the vast majority of cases that are stalled out not because of homeowners or defendants or anybody else that's slowing down the process, but they are stalled out because the plaintiffs will not move their cases forward. And let me be explicit about this. There is next to nothing that can be done in this bill which will affect that which is the major problem perplexing courts all across the state, and that is the plaintiffs won't proceed with their cases. Again, what Senator Fasano asked really is the key question that every senator and representative should ask about this bill. What's the point? I can tell you that the language that's in here, and I've taken it down from the beginning this legislation was introduced. It's confusing, it's contradictory, it's a mess in many technical ways. We've got to understand that legal words in this foreclosure context are very technical, and so when we're blending together things like owner and holder of a note, I just want to alert everyone to the fact that this language in here is going to conflict with what's occurring in appellate courts right now, and that is this conflict between who owns a note, who holds a note, and what the relationship are between the note and the mortgage. If this passes in its current form, or frankly in any reasonable form similar to this, it's going to be even more problematic than what exists now. Specifically, around line 52, it makes some incorrect allegations that are at least inconsistent with the current Florida Supreme Court forms and rules requiring pleader of ownership of the note and mortgage, and not just the holder status. And again, this gets into the negotiability of the promissory note, which is currently bubbling up in appellate courts. There was a lot of discussion made about new requirements placed in this legislation for filing, and what this misses is the Supreme Court rules and the process and practice that lawyers are supposed to engage in before they file foreclosure complaints already exist in our laws and our rules and our case law. The problem that exists, and a major reason why these 368 or so thousand cases are pending across the state of Florida, is because the lawyers and the foreclosure mills failed to follow the rules and laws that already exist. Let me make it very clear, and I encourage everyone to follow up with judges about this point I'm about to make. If the plaintiffs had followed the rules that have existed in this state for decades, and frankly some of them back for 100 years or more, if the plaintiffs have followed the rules from the beginning, we would not be in the mess that we are in right now. The great majority of the problems that are caused and that are clogging our courtrooms are because the plaintiffs failed to follow very simple and clear rules from the beginning. What are those? The rules are, when you're going to sue somebody in the state of Florida, you simply gather the facts and the information that you need before you file that lawsuit. And in the foreclosure complaint is a very easy lawsuit. There's a form that the Florida Supreme Court has provided. It's very simple. You fill out that form. The plaintiff owns and holds the note and mortgage or has the right to enforce. That's a finessed point, but frankly, the plaintiff has the right to foreclose the mortgage. You then attach to that the note. You then attach to that the mortgage. That's really all we're talking about, folks. A foreclosure complaint, a note, a mortgage. And why did this become so complicated such that our courts are clogged with this? It's a reflection of the chaos that the banks are in right now, and that's not something that can be fixed with legislation. What we see before us is an ad hoc attempt to solve a problem created by an industry that got themselves into a mess. We should not be about trying to fix the mess that they've caused with prospective legislation. That should be fixed through litigation that's pending right now, number one, or, frankly, the banks and institutions should be going back to the defendants in these lawsuits, to the homeowners, and working with them to solve these problems. We're seeing that a little bit as this court system has bogged down. It's forcing the banks to go back and work with people, which is absolutely what they should. Even though the bill passed out of committee, it's very encouraging to see that we had senators on both sides of the aisles asking some very hard questions and very reasonable questions. Senator Hayes represented that one of the major problems that he sees is the fraud and the abuse in the court system, and he wanted to see something done to address those. A good senator asking a good question. Likewise, Senator Ulrich, a sheriff no less, saying that what he sees are, again, problems with fraud and abuses and gross errors in these files. I frankly was a bit disappointed because I didn't see direct questions being answered by these very good senators who were asking some specific questions. Then going down, again, Senator Fasano, I think, had the best question of the whole hearing. What's the point of the bill? He doesn't see where this is going to address the problems that he sees. I suspect that this senator did the right thing, which was reach out to judges in his district and say, hey, judges, what do you need to solve the problem that's clogging the court system? Likewise, going down into Senators Sobel and Margolis, two excellent senators who have always been champions for consumers and are frankly right now just standing up for good legal processes, saying this bill has some problems with it. But likewise, we've got a good Senator Bennett, Michael Bennett from down in the Manatee County area, a banker, more no doubt, and asking real questions about the purpose of this bill and some of the problems with the title aspects of this. Representative Pasadena made a good point in here when she said that one of the problems that exists in foreclosure right now, if you had all these foreclosure plaintiffs that were filing a foreclosure by throwing whatever up against the wall to see what sticks. And in fact, that gets back to my earlier point. That's why our court systems have clogged down right now. It's an admission by Representative Pasadomo that the problem in our court system is the plaintiffs throwing whatever they want up against the wall to see what sticks. And as she says, filing a complaint without having all their ducks in a row. That, in fact, is what's wrong with our court system. We should not reward that behavior, Representative Pasadomo and senators, by passing legislation to excuse their wrongful conduct. What should happen is these cases that are plagued by problems should be dismissed. That is the penalty they must pay for choking our court system by overworking our clerks and our judges. They should get their ducks in a row, as the good representative says, and refile those cases. The representative indicated that there were not enough controls in prior foreclosure filings, and yet what this bill seeks to do is to put a laundry list of requirements on there. Senator Ulrich again asked, is there something in this bill which forces them to show a chain of assignments of mortgage? And there's just not in there from what I can read. There's a new requirement having to do with the notes, but again, even that is complicated by the fact that that's not entirely what's necessary. We need assignments of mortgage that show a chain of ownership, and then, yes, an assignment of a chain of the notes. So, going back through these comments that were made, the order to show cause is a deeply troubling and problematic procedure. I think one of the things that I heard were questions from Senator Bennett in particular, asking about title insurance and what wasn't covered. And the fact of the matter is that's not adequately addressed in this bill. One of the fictions that's being perpetrated by this bill is some suggestion that the primary intent here is to focus on the problem of abandoned property. And I took to heart Senator Bennett's questions and problems about abandoned properties in his neighborhood, apparently. And in fact, this is a big problem. But I say to you, Senator Bennett, and I'll be real direct and specific, the key to addressing abandoned property in this state is the existing laws. If a property is abandoned, a plaintiff can move for a affidavit of diligent search and publication. I just had it happen to a client not too long ago, and a private investigator can make an affidavit and get an affidavit of diligent search filed very quickly. A plaintiff can be in possession of a property, legal possession of a property, in a very, very brief period of time, given the existing procedures for abandoned residential property. That really is, again, one of the fictions of this thing, that somehow there's a problem with abandoned residential property, that our laws need to exist. No. We can address those issues in individual cases with the laws as they exist. I liked hearing Senator Pasadomo admit that if banks enter into property, it can be trespassing. That is a phenomenon we have happening across the state, where minimum wage employees or low-paid agents of the banks are going and trespassing onto property, breaking into property, seizing property, personal property, changing locks. This is an absolute violation of the law. It's occurring all across the state of Florida, and it's a dangerous situation. I have depositions of people where they admit that they're having guns pulled on them, and I'm here to tell you that we are going to have these agents of the banks be shot by property owners because they're entering onto property illegally, they're trespassing. They shouldn't be doing that, and our Senate and our representatives, our legislature, should not be passing any legislation which serves to make that more formalized process. It just shouldn't happen at all. The bill is a very, very bad bill that should not pass. You know, we had a couple of people in there testifying, including this Mark Wilson, you know, from the chamber, somehow indicating that it's wrong. The best way to rebuild the economy is to get through foreclosures. And while I might agree with that, getting through foreclosures doesn't mean a chopped up legal process. Getting through foreclosures means we have to strengthen an economy, put people back to work so they can afford houses, not throw them out into the streets quicker. This is bad legislation. It's bad from a technical standpoint. It's bad from a substantive standpoint. And a lot of the debate and discussion that I heard represented very good questions with well-minded senators who are asking hard questions. I hope that the rest of our legislators, as this bill continues to move its way through, will actually look at the text of the legislation and ask that key question that the good Senator Fasano asked: what's the point of this bill? It seems like we've got the existing laws we need to get through this crisis. The problem is the banks aren't doing their job. We always have to be mindful up until the very end, because you know this bill as it exists could be amended, and I suspect will try to be amended by the banks and the title industry. And if they do so, it's going to cause even more damage. So we got to watch that very carefully. We got to continue to talk to our representatives and senators in very specific, respectful, and fact-intensive ways, so that they represent and understand that this bill is bad, shouldn't pass in any form.